Number 1. Staff Sergeant Robert Bales. On the night of March 11, 2012, former Staff Sergeant Robert Bales, who was born in Norwood, Ohio, and had enlisted in the U.S. Army after the September 11th attacks, left his post at Camp Balambe, a remote base in Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. He entered the nearby villages of Al-Khuzai and Najiban, where he murdered 16 Afghan civilians, 9 children and 7 adults. Some of the victims' bodies were set on fire. After returning briefly to base, Bales left once again to commit more killings. When he came back a second time, he was covered in blood, with bloodstains on his clothes and weapons. He was taken into custody and later transferred to the United States for trial. Before joining the military, Bales had worked as a stockbroker. He had already served 3 tours in Iraq and was on his 4th deployment, his first in Afghanistan, when the massacre took place. In June 2013, Bales pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. During the hearing, the judge asked him why he believed he was guilty. Bales read from a statement, admitting that he left the village stability platform and went to Al-Khuzai. Inside a compound, he saw a woman named Naik Marga. After seeing her, he formed the intent to kill her and eventually shot her with a firearm. When asked why he did it, Bales responded, "Sir, as far as why, I've asked myself that question 1,000,000 times. There's no good reason in this world for why I did the horrible things I did." In August 2013, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The families of the Afghan victims rejected the sentence. One said, "If they don't execute him, they're showing their power. He martyred 16 of our people, but they won't execute the one person who did it. Would they forgive us if we killed 16 Americans?" As of April 2025, Robert Bales is 51 years old and has served about 12 years of his life sentence. He remains incarcerated at the United States Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, the military's only maximum security facility. And since he was sentenced to life without parole, he is expected to spend the rest of his life behind bars. Number 2. Sergeant Malik Kearney. Sergeant Malik Kearney was a U.S. Army soldier stationed at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. He was married to Carlin Ramirez, a 24-year-old Army private first class based at Fort Meade, Maryland. The couple had a 4-month-old daughter. Kearney and Ramirez were married for only about 5 weeks before their relationship began to fall apart. Kearney had been violent toward Ramirez, which led her to relocate and file a protective order through the military, prohibiting all contact between them. Despite this, Kearney began planning to murder his wife. He recruited his mistress, Dolores Delgado, and together they came up with a plan to carry it out without being caught. Kearney instructed Dolores to calculate her vehicle's gas mileage from South Carolina to Maryland, then purchase enough fuel in advance so he wouldn't have to stop at any gas stations. She also provided him with a firearm for the murder. On August 24, 2015, Kearney drove Delgado's car from South Carolina to Severn, Maryland, avoiding highways and using back roads to stay off the radar. When he arrived, he used his key to enter Ramirez's townhouse. An argument broke out, during which Ramirez made it clear she wanted their relationship to end. Kearney responded by shooting her 3 times at close range, killing her. He then staged the scene to make it look like a sexual assault, removing her pants and pulling down her underwear. Before leaving, he placed their infant daughter in her mother's lifeless arms. Kearney then returned to South Carolina, and Delgado disposed of the weapon. Together, they pretended as if nothing had happened. Neighbors who heard the baby crying alerted the police. When officers entered the home, they discovered the body of Carlin Ramirez and began a homicide investigation. A $20,000 reward was offered for information. For over a year, the case remained unsolved, until investigators began focusing on Kearney. His past abuse, the existing protective order, and a confession from Dolores Delgado, who was initially a prime suspect, all pointed to him. Hoping for a reduced sentence, Delgado cooperated fully. She revealed their plan in detail, admitted to supplying the weapon, helping dispose of the evidence, and assisting with fuel for the trip. She also testified against Kearney during the trial. In court, Carlin Ramirez's mother emotionally recalled how Kearney attended her daughter's funeral, staring at the coffin and saying, "For all we know, the killer is among us." Through tears, she begged the judge to show no mercy, saying he had no regard for human life and should be removed from society. In August 2018, after an 11-day trial, Maliek Kearney was found guilty of interstate travel to commit domestic violence resulting in death, and of using a firearm during a violent crime. On November 30th, he was sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Kearney showed little emotion during sentencing, telling the court, "There is no moment that I don't miss Carlin. The love I have for her grows stronger each day." The judge called him a liar and said he did not believe him. Dolores Delgado also pleaded guilty to interstate travel to commit domestic violence resulting in death. She was sentenced to 17 years in federal prison on September 7, 2018. As of April 2025, Maliek Kearney is 43 years old and has served approximately 6 years and 5 months of his life sentence. The infant daughter, who was found lying next to her mother's body, is now being raised by family. Number 3, Sergeant John M. Russell. Sergeant John M. Russell was a communications specialist serving his third tour of duty in Iraq with the 54th Engineer Battalion. In the months leading up to the tragic event that would define his legacy, Russell showed clear signs of severe depression and paranoia. He made multiple visits to military mental health clinics, convinced that his unit was trying to end his military career, an idea that only intensified his emotional and psychological distress. On May 11, 2009, at Camp Liberty near Baghdad, Iraq, Russell was escorted out of a counseling session at the Camp Liberty Combat Stress Center after a heated altercation. While being taken back to his unit at Camp Stryker, he managed to overpower his escort, steal an unsecured M16 rifle, and return to the clinic. Once there, he opened fire, killing 5 U.S. military personnel: 54-year-old Army Major Matthew P. Housel, 52-year-old Navy Commander Charles K. Springle, 25-year-old Army staff Sergeant Christian E. Bueno Galdos, 20-year-old Army Specialist Jacob D. Barton, and 19-year-old Army Private First Class Michael E. Yates, Jr. Russell was apprehended immediately after the shooting. He was charged with 5 counts of premeditated murder, 1 count of aggravated assault, and 1 count of attempted murder. At first, military prosecutors sought the death penalty, but in May 2013, Russell pleaded guilty to unpremeditated murder as part of a plea deal to avoid capital punishment. Despite this plea, the military judge, Colonel David Kahn, found that the murders were, in fact, premeditated and sentenced Russell to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His defense team argued that Russell was suffering from severe depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and possibly a traumatic brain injury due to prior combat exposure. They claimed these conditions diminished his ability to control his actions. As of April 2025, John Russell is 60 years old and has served approximately 11 years and 11 months of his life sentence. He remains incarcerated at the United States Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. This case is a devastating reminder of the urgent need for better mental health care within the military, and how untreated psychological wounds can lead to unthinkable consequences. Number 4, Sergeant William Kreutzer. Sergeant William Kreutzer Jr. served in the 325th Airborne Infantry Regiment of the 82nd Airborne Division, based at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He enlisted in the U.S. Army in February 1992 and rose to the rank of sergeant by October 1994. Throughout his service, Kreutzer reportedly endured constant teasing and cruel pranks from fellow soldiers. These experiences led to growing feelings of resentment and isolation. He was mockingly nicknamed Crazy Kreutzer. During one assignment, he suffered a breakdown and voiced intentions to harm other soldiers. As a result, he was questioned, disciplined, and referred to mental health professionals. While they found that he struggled with anger and low self-esteem, they determined that he did not pose a threat. Still, he was prohibited from using weapons for 2 weeks. Just one day before the attack, Kreutzer made a disturbing phone call to specialist Burl Mays, warning that he intended to open fire during training. Mays immediately reported the threat, but superiors dismissed it, calling Kreutzer just a baby. Nevertheless, Mays was permitted to search Kreutzer's room, where he discovered a well-written will. By then, it was too late. Kreutzer had already left and positioned himself in a tree line overlooking Towle Stadium at Fort Bragg. Around 5 a.m., as approximately 1,300 soldiers gathered for morning physical training, he opened fire. Major Stephen Mark Badger was killed, and 18 others were wounded. Despite being unarmed, several brigade staff, led by Lieutenant Colonel Mike Carrion, confronted Kreutzer, forcing him to change positions multiple times. Finally, 3 Special Forces soldiers, Sergeant First Class Tony Miner, Sergeant First Class Bob House, and Sergeant Edward Mongold, managed to tackle and disarm him. He was immediately taken into custody by military police. In 1996, Kreutzer was convicted of premeditated murder, 18 counts of attempted premeditated murder, larceny of government munitions, and other charges. He was initially sentenced to death. However, in March 2004, the Army Court of Criminal Appeals overturned his death sentence, citing ineffective counsel and mental health concerns. On March 10, 2009, Kreutzer accepted a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. He pleaded guilty to all charges, and on March 24th, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He was reduced in rank to E1, stripped of all military pay and benefits, and dishonorably discharged. During the trial, Kreutzer stated that he wanted to send a message to the chain of command, one he felt had forgotten the well-being of the common soldier. He also expressed deep remorse, saying, "To each and every person that I hurt directly by shooting them, and to each and every person affected by my actions, I offer my most heartfelt, sincere apology." As of April 2025, William Kreutzer has served approximately 29 years and 6 months of his life sentence. He remains incarcerated at the United States Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, where he is expected to spend the rest of his life. Number 5. Soldier Grady Wayne Wilkes. Grady Wayne Wilkes, a 35-year-old former soldier, served in the Alabama Army National Guard. He enlisted in 2010 and, by 2019, had reached the rank of corporal, leading an infantry fire team. On the night of May 19, 2019, officers from the Auburn Police Department responded to a domestic disturbance call at the Arrowhead Trailer Park in Auburn, Alabama. The call came from Wilkes's live-in girlfriend, Brooklyn Flaherty, who was also the mother of his child. She reported that Wilkes had physically assaulted her, grabbing her wrist and choking her. After speaking with the victim, officers William Buchner, Webb Sistrunk, Ron Asselin, and Evan Elliott approached Wilkes's residence to confront him. When they knocked on the door, Wilkes answered, wearing a military helmet, body armor, and armed with a rifle. Without saying a word, he opened fire. Officer William Buchner was fatally shot, and later pronounced dead at the hospital. Officers Webb Sistrunk and Evan Elliott were injured, while Officer Ron Asselin was shot at but was not hit. Following the shooting, Wilkes fled the scene, triggering a massive manhunt. He was apprehended the next morning, around 7:12 a.m., less than a mile away. A citizen tip led to his capture. Wilkes was indicted on charges of capital murder for the death of Officer Buechner, attempted murder for the shootings of Officers Sistrunk and Elliott, and domestic violence for the assault on his girlfriend. During the trial, prosecutors emphasized Wilkes's premeditated intent, pointing out that he opened the door fully dressed in tactical gear and immediately fired on the officers. The defense argued that Wilkes suffered from mental illness and did not intend to kill anyone. Wilkes himself claimed that his military training and reflexes took over, leading him to instinctively load and fire his weapon. In August 2023, the jury found him guilty of capital murder and attempted murder. Although prosecutors sought the death penalty, the jury sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. One of the most chilling moments during the trial came from Officer Buechner's body cam footage, capturing his final words after being shot, "Lord, please help me." Wilkes later expressed remorse, stating that he was very sorry for his actions. As of April 2025, Wilkes has served approximately 1 year and 8 months of his life sentence. Because he was convicted in a civilian court for crimes committed against civilian law enforcement, he is currently serving his sentence in a state correctional facility in Alabama. Number 6. Senior Airman Andrew Paul Witt. In the early hours of July 5, 2004, a gruesome scene was discovered at a military residence, 1152 Fort Valley Street, located on Robins Air Force Base in Warner Robins, Georgia. Inside the home, Senior Airman Andy Schleipzig was found lying on his back in the living room, dead from multiple stab wounds. Nearby, his wife, Jamie Schleipzig, was also found deceased, wearing only a t-shirt and underwear. A third victim, Staff Sergeant Jason King, had managed to escape the house but was in critical condition at a nearby hospital, undergoing emergency surgery for stab wounds he had sustained during the violent assault. The attacker was Senior Airman Andrew Paul Witt, an avionics technician with the 116th Air Control Wing at Robins Air Force Base. Witt had enlisted in 2001 and had been stationed at Robins AFB since August 2002. He was a close friend of Andy and Jaime Schleipzig. The events leading up to the attack began the night before. Andy and Jaime were spending time at the home of Staff Sergeant Jason King and his wife when Witt called asking to join them. Although Andy agreed, he left soon after Witt arrived due to a headache, leaving Jaime and the others behind. That night, Witt made an unsolicited advance toward Jaime, trying to kiss her. She immediately pushed him away. The next day, when Andy learned what had happened, he became furious. He confronted Witt over the phone, and Witt apologized profusely. Witt then suggested they meet in person to resolve the issue. Andy agreed, and also mentioned he would report the incident to Witt's superiors. What followed was tragic. Witt changed into his battle dress uniform, drove to the Schleipzig's residence, and during a confrontation stabbed all 3 individuals. Both Andy and Jaime died from their injuries, but Jason King, though gravely wounded, managed to escape. He stumbled down the street to the nearest house with a light on, the home of Tech Sergeant Jimmy Free, who immediately called 911. Andrew Witt was arrested later that same day by agents from the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. During interrogation, Witt initially denied involvement, but after several rounds of questioning, he confessed to the attack, describing in detail how he pushed open the bedroom door in search of Jaime to kill her. On July 8, 2004, Witt was formally charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder and 1 count of attempted murder under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. In October 2005, a military jury convicted him on all charges and sentenced him to death, marking the first death sentence in the Air Force since 1990. The sentence was appealed several times. In 2013, the Air Force Court of Criminal Appeals overturned the death sentence due to ineffective counsel. The Air Force Court of Appeals reinstated it in 2014. But in 2016, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces again reversed the sentence and ordered a new sentencing hearing. Finally, on July 6, 2018, Witt was resentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As of April 2025, Andrew Witt has served approximately 20 years and 9 months of his life sentence. Number 7. Private Isaac Aguigui. Private Isaac Aguigui was just 22 years old when he became responsible for a series of horrific crimes that included multiple murders, the creation of a domestic terrorist group, and the death of his pregnant wife. Isaac was stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia, as a member of the U.S. Army. On July 17, 2011, his wife, 24-year-old Sergeant Deirdre Aguigui, was found unresponsive in their on-base apartment. She was approximately 7 months pregnant. An initial autopsy was inconclusive, but a follow-up examination revealed over 20 bruises and abrasions across her body, including marks on her wrists consistent with the use of handcuffs. The evidence strongly suggested death by asphyxiation, likely strangulation. Investigators soon learned that the couple's marriage had deteriorated. They had met in 2009 at a military prep school and married shortly after. But by the summer of 2011, their relationship was strained by drug use and mutual infidelity. Isaac reportedly doubted the child was his and wanted a divorce. Just hours before Deirdre's death, Isaac sent a disturbing text message to an ex-girlfriend that read, "We'll have plenty of money. All I need is your body whenever I want it." After Deirdre's death, Isaac collected $500,000 in life insurance and death benefits. Instead of using the money for his family, he used it to fund a domestic militia group he created, Forever Enduring, Always Ready, or FEAR. Comprised of active duty and former military personnel, the group aimed to stockpile weapons, overthrow the U.S. government, take over Fort Stewart, and even carry out an assassination attempt on the president. The members of FEAR were marked with anarchist-style tattoos and operated under strict secrecy. They spent over $87,000 on firearms, explosives, and tactical gear. Isaac recruited troubled or disillusioned soldiers into FEAR using his military connections. In one recorded video, he chillingly described himself as the nicest, cold-blooded murderer you will ever meet. By December 2011, Isaac suspected that 2 people posed a threat to the group's secrecy: former soldier Michael Rourke, age 19, and his 17-year-old girlfriend Tiffany York. Rourke had recently left the Army and was previously involved with the group. Fearing they might expose FEAR, Isaac ordered their execution. On the night of December 4, 2011, the couple was lured into the woods under the pretense of target practice. There, Tiffany was shot in the head twice by Officer Anthony Pedden while exiting the car. Michael was forced to kneel by Private Christopher Salmon and then shot twice in the head as well. The brutal killings triggered an investigation that exposed the existence and true intentions of fear. In July 2013, Isaac Aguigui pleaded guilty to 2 counts of malice murder and 4 counts of violating Georgia's anti-gang law in connection with the deaths of Rourke and York. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But that wasn't the end. In March 2014, new testimony from a former Army friend revealed that Isaac had confessed, just weeks after his wife's death, that he had handcuffed Deirdre during sex, placed a plastic bag over her head, and suffocated her. He claimed it was consensual, but the injuries and circumstances said otherwise. Isaac was court-martialed for the murder of his wife and unborn child. He was found guilty and given another life sentence without parole. As of April 2025, Isaac Aguigui has served approximately 11 years and 9 months of his life sentences. Number 8. Soldier Ryan Gibson Anderson. Ryan Gibson Anderson, a 47-year-old tank crewman with the 303rd Armor Battalion of the 81st Armor Brigade, was stationed at Fort Lewis near Tacoma, Washington. Born in Everett, Washington, Anderson had a military background that included serving as a specialist in the Washington State National Guard. He attended Cascade High School in Everett and later graduated from Washington State University in 2002 with a Bachelor of Arts in History, specializing in Middle Eastern military history. While stationed at Fort Lewis, Anderson underwent training for a year-long deployment to Iraq with his National Guard unit. It was during this time in late 2003 that Anderson began visiting extremist internet chat rooms, where he sought to establish contact with al-Qaeda operatives. In these online spaces, he offered to provide sensitive information on U.S. military capabilities, weaponry, and tactics. His activities were first detected by Shannon Ross Miller, a former municipal judge in Montana who was monitoring jihadist websites. Miller recognized the potential threat and alerted the FBI. This led to a joint sting operation between the Army, the FBI, and the Department of Justice in early 2004. Unbeknownst to Anderson, he began engaging with undercover agents posing as al-Qaeda members. During these exchanges, Anderson provided valuable military information, including sketches of M1A1 and M1A2 tanks, his passport photo, military identification card, and weapons card. He also revealed sensitive details about U.S. Army troop movements, equipment, and tactics. In one disturbing chat, he even described how to target U.S. Army personnel by detailing the exact caliber of rounds needed to penetrate the windshield of an up-armored Humvee, potentially killing the driver. Anderson's behavior appeared to stem from a desire for belonging and acceptance, as he sought connection in these extremist circles. He even confided in a close friend that the FBI had questioned him, signaling he was aware his actions were under scrutiny. His criminal activities came to an abrupt end on the afternoon of Thursday, February 12, 2004, when he was arrested at Fort Lewis, Washington, as part of the sting operation. His wife, who was with him at the time, was reportedly shocked by the arrest. Anderson faced 5 counts of attempting to aid the enemy. The defense argued that he suffered from bipolar disorder and Asperger's syndrome, which they claimed impaired his judgment and contributed to his role-playing behavior in the extremist chat rooms. Despite this defense, on September 3, 2004, Anderson was found guilty on all counts by a military jury. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole, demoted to the rank of private, and dishonorably discharged from the Army. As of April 2025, Ryan G. Anderson has served approximately 20 years and 8 months of his life sentence at the United States Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. He is notable for being the second Muslim soldier with Fort Lewis connections to be accused of wrongdoing related to the war on terrorism. Number 9. Soldier Dwight Jeffrey Loving. Dwight Jeffrey Loving, born in Rochester, New York, was a private first class in the United States Army stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. On December 11, 1988, Loving entered 2 convenience stores and robbed them, obtaining less than $100. Needing more funds, he turned to local taxi drivers. On the evening of December 24, 1988, Loving hailed a cab driven by 20-year-old Army Private Christopher Fay, who was working part-time as a taxi driver. Loving directed Fay to a secluded area within Fort Hood, where he robbed him at gunpoint. After taking Fay's money, Loving shot him in the back of the head. Seeing that Fay was still moving, he shot him again to make sure he was dead. Fay's body was discovered shortly thereafter by another soldier. Later that same day, Loving hailed another cab, this time driven by 44-year-old retired Army Master Sergeant Bobby Charbino. Using a similar tactic, Loving directed Charbino to a secluded location in Killeen, Texas, where he robbed Charbino and shot him in the head, killing him. After the second murder, Loving went out to socialize with his girlfriend and others at local nightclubs. Later that evening, Loving attempted to rob a third cab driver, Howard Harrison. During the robbery, Harrison managed to struggle with Loving, disarm him, and escape with injuries. This encounter provided crucial evidence, which eventually led to Loving's apprehension. The following day, a joint task force consisting of FBI agents, Texas Rangers, and U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Division agents arrested Loving. He provided a videotaped confession detailing the murders and attempted murder, which played a pivotal role in his trial. In his confession, Loving admitted that he killed his first victim to see if he could get away with it, and killed his second victim for fun. In March 1989, Loving was tried by a military court-martial at Fort Hood. On April 3, 1989, he was convicted of 2 counts of premeditated murder, attempted murder, and multiple counts of robbery. The court-martial panel unanimously sentenced him to death. Loving was just 21 years old at the time of his sentencing. Loving's conviction and death sentence underwent extensive appellate review. In 1996, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of his death sentence, and subsequent appeals were unsuccessful. On January 17, 2017, just days before leaving office, President Barack Obama commuted Loving's death sentence to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The commutation specifically stated that Loving would have no rights to parole or sentence suspension. Following his commutation, Loving was incarcerated at the United States Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, the U.S. military's maximum security facility. As of April 2025, Dwight Jeffrey Loving, now 57 years old, has served approximately 36 years and 4 months of his life sentence. Given the terms of his commutation, he will remain imprisoned for the remainder of his life.